Behavioral thinking is the opposite. The customer's action determines.
CRM should be reducing the effort for the customer, not adding to it.
The calendar doesn't really drive it, the customer's behavior does.
Teams at channels thinking that more reach is equal to more results, but if your cross-channel coordination isn't functioning well,
Window between the first purchase and the second purchase is where most retention revenue is either won or lost. I think that's why.
if you're wondering why your repeat customers or purchases aren't increasing despite doing everything by the book, continue watching. In most retail CRM programs, a lot of teams don't realize specific execution gaps that are costing them their results, their outcome. So in today's video, we'll walk you through those specific points where Lifecycle actually break down. It could be across onboarding, let's say post-purchase and reactivation. And we'll also give you exact fixes to solve those challenges on your end. Hi, I'm Chintan Doshi. I'm head of CRM and Lifecycle marketing team at Mavlers. And today I'm joined by my dear friend, Matt Kelly, who is our growth strategy partner. Matt, it's great to have you back.
Thanks, Chintan. I'm excited for this one.
Great. So Matt, let's start at the beginning. Let's address onboarding. Retail brands pour a lot of resources into their welcome journey, but despite that investment, most brands still lose the customers right after that first conversion. Why does that keep happening?
Yeah, you're right. It's a really common blind spot for teams, Chintan. Most brands handle onboarding really well, but they can create a really good first impression. But what tends to happen once that welcome sequence is kicked off to the customer and they make their first purchase, it's dropped into some generic flow. And we've all seen it. We've all purchased something online. They handle the order confirmation well. That moves right into some shipping information, most likely. We might get a cross-sell email a week or two later. But the problem isn't those touch points. It's more, nobody's really using the insights of what we're doing as customers on their websites to take advantage of things like what category that customer is in, information like what price point did they choose, and what's the context of that purchase. I think this matters for people because that window between the first purchase and the second purchase is where most retention revenue is either won or lost. I think that's why in the first 30 to 60 days after that first purchase matters so much in this life cycle conversation that we're having, Chin.
Yep. And you truly said that that's such a critical window. But what does it actually look like when a customer starts drifting away?
Yeah, so the signals are pretty consistent. Declining open rates. This is the big one. This is the first one that I'd say. It could be a shift in browsing behavior, or maybe they're just not browsing. They're going directly to what they want. It could be a lapse in category visits. So they could be, shifting or drifting into other categories and widening their view of your brand. They're purchasing different stuff. There's a lot of variety in the way that they're engaging with you and they're transacting. And basically, you're looking for reduced overall engagement in any one of these categories. I think these are the mid-life cycle warning signs that most CRM programs just aren't really set up to catch.
So thanks, Matt, for sharing all those signals. And given all this, I'm curious, what would you actually tell or recommend a CRM team to go and fix first?
Yeah, so any of those CRM teams that I'm working with, any teams that deal with lifecycle touchpoints, lifecycle engagements, I'd encourage them to stop building a program around a start and an end to that engagement that they're mapping out and they're working on. I would say the best thing to do is to consider that lifecycle as more of a continuous loop that's really unique to every buyer, right? It's hard to execute something like that on a one-to-one personalization level, but moving toward that is something that I would encourage. What they need to do here in order to move in that direction is just audit what's happening in the first 30 days after the first purchase. Not transactional emails like order confirmation or shipping notifications. Look at whether the first real marketing touch points, is that actually bringing the customer back or not? Secondly, I check whether the post-purchase journey responds differently based on what customers actually bought versus what you think that they want. We don't really know what's happening in these scenarios unless we're watching and we're collecting information that we can use in that scenario. So if somebody's on the same journey for every first purchase, regardless of what they purchased or which category they came from or even the value of that item that they purchased, what are you really measuring and what are you really able to do with that? So the third strategy, I think, that I would recommend most is define what early disengagement looks like based on your actual data. Okay. So in the first 20 to 30 days after purchase, what specific behaviors or even absence of behaviors, I think that's a big one to think through, like, because that is your intervention window. That's when you can actually affect that and make a change and influence whether they come back and continue to be a customer of yours. If you're doing that after 90 days, 120 days, 6 months later, you've really lost your opportunity to influence that customer's retention and loyalty for your brand.
Yep, yep. So is it wise to say that if it really comes down to acting early or taking actions on early stage before the customer is already gone, that timing is everything, right? If you don't act in that particular time frame, like you have a cold customer to manage.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I think the other thing that I'm seeing though in this conversation, which I'd actually kick back to you to give me some just insight on from your point of view, is teams don't understand like how many touches is too many, and so they err on the side of too few. Is that what you're seeing? Can you talk to me about that?
I would say, Matt, that this is one of the most common patterns we see with prospects who come to us. That's commonly identified pattern. Teams at channels thinking that more reach is equal to more results, but if your cross-channel coordination isn't functioning well, isn't delivering well, then on the customer side, what the experience is that they are receiving the same message at different times on different channels. So like they would be receiving an email at 9 a.m., then an SMS version of the same email at 11 a.m., and then a push notification maybe around 2 or 3 in the noon. So when we talk about a multi-channel strategy, we don't mean like sending same kind of messages or repetition across different channels, because over time, the kind of repetition just ends up training people to tune out from the brand's communication. So customers become so frustrated that they unsubscribe from all of your channels, and ultimately you have lost your genuine customer. So that's how your push outs start increasing. People tend to move away from your brand because you don't have a core multi-channel strategy, and eventually you start seeing open rates start to drift, click rates start to drop, and suddenly a program that was working for you 6 months ago, 8 months ago, now begins to underperform. So I always say CRM should be reducing the effort for the customer, not adding to it.
I agree with that. With the projects you've worked on, the customers that you've seen do this well, what separates getting this right from a customer that might be falling into this trap we're talking about?
So the best programs I've seen aren't the ones with the highest send volume. They are the ones where every message feels intentional, like every message is giving some value to the customer. You know, Matt, in behavioral science, there is a concept called mere exposure effect. So what that theory actually says is that people develop a preference for things they encounter repeatedly, but only when those encounters feel positive and low pressure. The moment someone senses only pressure or friction, the relationship starts to erode. In CRM, cross-channel overlap is a pressure, and pressure, as we know, pushes people away from yourself and your brands.
It's a great point. I definitely agree. I've seen it myself. I've had a career mostly in sales, and so messaging can be tough, and pressure is never good. But I'm curious how you think customers can approach just solving for this or fixing this.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. We can discuss on that. So some of the strategies we use with our clients for better orchestration would be the first is moving, let's say, from per channel frequency caps to setting frequency caps around per customer. So normally a common challenge which we have seen across our customers, they focus on per channel frequency rather than per customer. You should keep customer at center. So what that means actually is, in practice, instead of email team and the SMS team working in silos, right, both having their own set of campaigns, setting the send frequencies, you set one rule per customer in terms of what level of messaging and what frequency of messaging they would be seeing. Something like this person should receive no more than 3 marketing touch points in a time frame of 7 days. It could be email, SMS, push, in-app, whatever channel you are focusing on. The another strategy would be to use channel sequencing instead of parallel sends. A common mistake which CRM leaders and brands make is sending same messages across all the channels. So you need to make sure that you don't use parallel sends and focus on channel sequencing. What that actually means is that instead of triggering emails and SMS at the same time with same type of content, you send the email first, and only if it goes unopened or there is no engagement on that email from the customer, then only you deploy the SMS or let's say in-app or push notification, because then it's more respectful use of higher attention channel, because SMS is reaching someone who genuinely did not see the email, right? So if they would have engaged, there's no point of sending the same message on SMS. And the third strategy is to stop sending emails to your disengaged segment or sunset audience, right? At the same cadence as our most active customer. Most common challenge which I've seen across brand is they send emails for disengaged segment and most active customers together. Reducing your comms to disengaged segment always improves re-engagement, because you are essentially stopped annoying them, and when you do send something important, they can appreciate that and at least engage with your communication.
I've not seen, choosing one or other channel to be really the problem. I'd say the coordination of all of those channels seems to be where people are having the most issue. Is that where you're seeing it break the experience? Just like the coordination of the different channels?
Yeah. So since we are talking about all this, I would love for you to address the bigger shift underneath at all, which is moving from batch and blast, right, which is a common term, to behavioral sense. How are you seeing teams make those transition?
Yeah, Chintan. I think this is a shift that everyone knows they need to make, but few have really made yet. I see batch mindset often come up in a couple different ways. So the first one is you build a CRM calendar for every month, and you work off the calendar. Week 1 is promotion. Week 2 is some sort of category that you want to isolate and push something to that category. And week 3 is like a loyalty message for everyone that's in the loyalty program. Customer receives a message only because it's their turn to receive that message, and not because they did anything to indicate that was something that they were ready for. Behavioral thinking is the opposite. The customer's action, whether it's like a browse, they abandon a cart, they make a purchase successfully, or let's say they've disengaged, like you were talking about, that is what determines the message that they receive next. The calendar doesn't really drive it, the customer's behavior does.
So yeah, you have rightly mentioned that actual trigger is the customer's own action, right? But if teams already know this, why aren't more of them doing it? Why they are not able to focus on it?
I'd say it's because the behavior-driven flow takes more upfront thinking than scheduling a campaign. You need to define the trigger. You have to decide what the right response is to that trigger. And then you have to think through what the right message should be, especially with context that there are edge cases. There are a lot of folks that kind of fall in between these big buckets. I'd say because it's harder, most people don't do it that way. They focus on the batch and blast mindset like we're talking about. But once they do it, once they go live with a behavioral model, the difference in performance is pretty huge.
Yep. So I would love to take more insights from you, Matt, on, let's say, as per your understanding, which signals are actually worth building triggers around, right, based on the input you have shared? Like, which are those signals where the brand should actually focus and start building those triggers?
Not exclusive to retail, but let's use a retail use case. So repeat browsing activity, especially multiple visits in the same category or product with a like within a short window. Purchase gaps. So for some of your customers that have made multiple purchases, for an example, like a customer typically comes back seasonally and buys the same category of product every season. Let's say that slipped and they haven't come back, but maybe a couple months later they come back for something else. Watch for examples of that. I would say a category shift is a big one too, especially in retail for brands that have multiple different categories, multiple different things they could be buying from you. When they go from the first category that brought them in to a second category or a third category, those signals are definitely worth paying attention to and capitalizing on. And then finally, the engagement drops. So when opens and clicks go quiet, you want to see how long this has happened and measure that length of time of the disengagement drop and engage differently based on how long they have been disengaged, right?
Yep.
So if you're building your responses to these signals, you'll drive more incremental revenue than a promotional calendar will.
So, in your opinion, Matt, at what point does building more of a behavioral flows or more of this behavioral flows actually start creating problem of its own?
I think there's a maturity point where adding more journeys stops being beneficial and it starts working against you. Okay, so teams with like 40, 50, or 60 journeys active and in market, they very well know how hard it is to maintain all of these. Okay, so the most mature programs that I've seen actually take this step to change their direction from a batch and blast or calendar-based model to something that's more behavioral, they have adaptive flows that route their customer based on where they actually are in their journey.
Yep. So there would be teams who would be at a certain maturity level, and there would be teams who aren't at that maturity level yet, right, and are still evolving. Where do they actually start in your opinion?
So the first stage of that maturity model on the low end, I would say, is what I would call the early stage. It's one and then repeat product or category views. Okay. If someone views the same product or category 3 times in a single session, don't mistake that for passive browsing. They're actively considering your product, so you need to respond for that brand. Okay. The second is post-purchase. Let's call that day 7. This is when the product has arrived. They had the chance to experience your product, like put their hands on it, see it in real life. And like they're heading to a place where they're in the right mindset to possibly re-engage your brand and come back and buy something else. Let's say it was a good experience. That's a natural window for a second purchase to happen. Thirdly, I'd say purchase gap. Define the expected repurchase interval for key categories. So when a customer goes past that interval without buying, you can immediately treat that as an early signal. And that way you can act on things before they fully disengage with your brand.
So we have got the triggers we discussed about. We have got the timing. But I have a feeling that personalization piece is where a lot of teams think they have cracked it, but actually they haven't.
Yeah, no, I agree. Chintan, we've spoken about triggers and timing and all that. Yeah. But personalization goes beyond that. I think teams are missing something, right? What do you think they're missing?
Yeah, so I keep saying this. There is a real difference between personalization that's built and the personalization that's actually felt, right, for the customer. So let me give you some examples of what personalization actually looks like in real. Let's say a customer who just bought a pair of running shoes. Felt personalization would look like sending them a guide of taking care of those shoes, and even a training plan for your runs. Something that adds value to the purchase they already made. Another example would be a customer who has been, let's say, buying from the same category for 6 months, suddenly browses something completely different, like what they were actually purchasing. Felt personalization would look like acknowledging that shift, maybe sending we noticed you exploring, let's say, product X message. Another example would be, imagine a customer who always opens the email at 8 in the evening, let's say 8 p.m. Felt personalization is making sure your next message lands at 7:55, right, in my inbox instead of, let's say, 10 in the morning batch and you have added them to, right? So that's how every customer takes personalization. And if you notice, in all 3 cases, the message felt like it was sent specifically for that person at that moment when it mattered the most to all of them. So that's what actually personalization should be.
Yeah, I agree. With your role specifically for the CRM teams that you work with, can you share at all how CRM teams can do this in practice?
Yeah, I would love to give you 3 specific or particular strategies which we try to follow at Mavlers with the customers we have. The first one, audit your send time, like when you actually send. Meaning pull up your last 5 campaigns and check when are your customers actually active. Did your comms go out at the specific moment? Most teams find the gap is much bigger than expected. So ideally, fix the timing first. That's the core. Secondly, reduce the repeated logic. Audit your active journeys, like, because most of the time we have seen that people or brands focus on building new journeys, but don't go back and check their existing journeys or audit them. So audit your active journeys side by side. If the same segmentation rules, dynamic content blocks, product recommendation logic appears across multiple flows and journeys, your customers have already learned to tune it out. Swap the logic in one journey, not a full rebuild, right? That's not what we'll recommend. Just enough to break the pattern. It should not look like it's a designated pattern in what they will be receiving the comms. And thirdly, let context drive the content you select. So rather than building a personalized message and then deciding when to send it, start with the customer's current context, where they are, what they've actually done recently, where they are in the life cycle stage, and let that determine the timing and the message and the type of content they should receive. So Matt, we have covered where execution breaks, where fatigue builds, how to move to behavioral triggers, and why personalization often misses the mark, which it should not. But we can't end without talking about the core of everything, which is retention. So I would love to have some insights from your end, and if you could share some of your thoughts around retention.
So my first recommendation is to move away from running blind discounts. Let's be honest, discounting works. It moves product. It drives short-term conversion directly tied to email. You can show an ROI that you sent something out and somebody bought something. There are moments where a discount email is the exact right thing to do at the exact right time to get somebody to come back and buy something. But it also trains them to expect that and wait until the right price comes and not make a purchase any other time other than when they get a high discount. In behavioral economics, one of the things that we bring up and we see over and over again is this principle called loss aversion, meaning that people feel the pain of losing something roughly twice as strongly as the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. I think that's why if you suddenly decide to stop running discounts, your customer actively feels like something is being taken away from them or like you're robbing them. So the loyalty takes a direct hit, right? That's the best thing that I'd say people should focus on when they're thinking about retention to start with.
So in your opinion, and if I can ask as a lifecycle marketer and trying to learn, right, what are the alternatives for them?
The viewers out there can try a couple things. So the first thing that I'd say, recognition makes a big difference. Making the customer feel genuinely seen and not just targeted. Like for example, triggering a personalized thank you message that references their most purchased category, for instance, or mentions them by name in the email and what they've bought before. Recognition is big. I'd say milestone moments is a big one. So acknowledging like a first anniversary or a 10th purchase or a category milestone that might trigger something in their loyalty program. Giving early access is a big one. Giving your best customers something that nobody else can have, sort of the exclusivity that's not available to everybody is very helpful. I think people really like that. You wanna try to surprise and delight them. I think surprise and delight is a concept that a term we use quite a bit. So it's an unexpected upgrade, a handwritten note, a small gift with that order, just something they weren't expecting. And lastly, one of the things that I think is seeing a really big uptick in just popularity and just influence is community. Communities are really popping up everywhere and a great way for people to drive loyalty and retention. But giving customers a space to connect with other customers and share, so they have the same interest, whether that's a private group, an event, or just curated content that is specific to that community. And they can only find it if they engage in that community. Belonging drives return visits, and it does that better than a promo code, in my opinion. The strongest lifecycle programs aren't just transactional. They give the customer a reason to feel like they're part of something. And brands with the best retention metrics are the ones where customers feel genuinely just a sense of belonging that's so big. Focus on that, and I think that you'll have better results. So, if you can remember one thing from today's video, your customers are not leaving because the campaigns are bad. They're leaving because your campaigns feel the same every time. And more volume won't fix that. Relevance will.
Thanks, Matt, for sharing all those insights. And honestly, this is the conversion I wish more and more retail CRM team should actually have it internally, because the symptoms are everywhere and the diagnosis is usually wrong. They are not able to define it. So you don't have to fix everything at once. Start with one step at a time that's costing you the most right now, and then definitely you'd be able to see the improvisation. So audit what happens after that first purchase is a crucial part. Look at your send frequency at the customer level, not at the channel level, which we definitely would love to emphasize on. And find the one high intent trigger you don't have to respond for yet. That's where your next meaningful lift in lifecycle marketing performance is actually sitting. And if you're watching this as someone who works at or runs a CRM agency, our next video is going to be specifically for you. We'll be covering why agencies are delivering more CRM campaigns than ever, but still struggling to drive consistent performance and outcome across different clients, and the operational gaps behind it, including, let's say, delivery volume, testing that doesn't compound, client expectation versus execution reality. We are going to go through all of it in that particular video. So make sure you are subscribed and you don't miss out. And once again, thanks to Matt, my dear friend, for giving us lovely insights. It was really great having you. And I'm sure all the people would have enjoyed your insights around onboarding, post-purchase, retention, and definitely the personalization, the most important piece.
Yeah. Well, Chintan, thank you. The pleasure's all mine. For those watching, I'll see you all in the next video.